And hello, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me in Whitby. And Whitby is, it has to be said, is just one of my happy places. It is just a place where I've been coming for many, many years. And if you've not been before, hopefully by the end of this tour, you will very much understand why it is that Whitby is the most beloved of all the English seaside resorts. Many of you have been here, happy memories, stories. For those that haven't, sit back, kick back for the next hour or so. Hopefully we're going to enchant you with some fabulous stories, some great history, really try and give you a sense of the place, of the character of this wonderfully authentic, not only seaside town, but kind of gothic, dark place. It's not a surprise that Bram Stoker chose this. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but let me just turn you round in a great kind of Patrick Stewart-style reveal for those that haven't been. The first, Polly, we are about 50 miles from York, somewhere in that kind of region, so about an hour 40, hour 45 drive. In front of us, we have the fabulous ruins of Whitby Abbey. So let's kind of walk towards. And the folklore, of course, here is second to none. But, of course, this was the site that Bram Stoker chose to locate the story of Dracula. But he actually wrote that on the West Cliff. So when we get over to the other side, we're going to talk about Dracula. So don't worry, if you come on for Dracula, there's going to be lots of it. But it'll be later on when we get to the other side. But first I want to talk about the history of the Abbey itself. So Whitby Abbey was actually founded in the year 656. So it's kind of part of the early church. It's part of the early Highlander, part of the early kind of conquest, if you like, or reconversion to the British Isles. It was founded originally by Irish monks with Christianity in this part of the world from Iona. So Dave, I know, talks about Dave Kavanagh, talks about the Irish monks from Iona. Well, they came over here, established Christianity. And along with York, Whitby was one of the very, very early centres of Christianity. So it was founded in 656 AD by the Northumbrian king Oswy. And the first abbess was St Hilda. And in 664, the Whitby Synod was held here. And that was really significant, actually, because it actually fixed our calendar and decided when Easter was going to fall. There was two kind of schools of thought. There was the Irish calendar and the Roman calendar. And at this meeting in 664, they decided they were going to adopt the Roman. Also, says, no, we don't know where Captain Cook's at. Okay, right, we'll get to Captain Cook later as well. But right now, let's just soak in the Abbey. So the story goes that when St Hilda came here, because she was a sort of a daughter of the gentry and aristocracy, and she was invited to come and be sort of the first abbess of this monastery. But when she arrived, the work was a long, long way behind. She expected it to be near completion. And in effect, apparently, work had barely begun. And the reason for this was there was an enormous problem with snakes. Apparently there were so many snakes up here on the cliff top that the construction workers just didn't feel safe. Too many were getting kind of snake bites and nibbles and various, whatever it is that snakes do, that's not all that nice. And so consequently, the work was a long way behind. Now St Hilda was not, well, she wasn't St Hilda at this point, she was just Hilda. But she wasn't put off by this. And she was pretty handy with a whip. I don't know how she acquired these skills. You know, it doesn't actually tell us how it is that she came to have these kind of dominatrix kind of skills with a whip. But nonetheless, apparently, she cracked her whip and she gradually dominated the snakes. Always with snakes, it seems to do with temptation, doesn't it? It seems to be a motif, Grace, doesn't it? In the Bible, the devil, snakes, serpents, phallus, all that sort of stuff. Let's not go, it's not a family show, so let's not go too far down that road. But it does seem that there is a sexual component, doesn't there, where the snake is concerned. So she cracks her whip, and gradually the snakes begin to sort of fall back. And she pushes them back, and she pushes them back, and she pushes them back, until such time as they actually fall off the cliff. And so lots and lots of snakes were found at the bottom of the cliffs. So people came to believe this was true. And I'll show you one of these snakes, if I can, a little bit later on in the tour. But that's a lovely story. And this was a really kind of well-endowed abbey. It was very, very wealthy. And they had a fantastic Snakes you've presumed like pagans. Yeah, it's sort of shot through, is it? The snakes are kind of right the way through kind of biblical stories. So they're not to be trusted, are they? They've lost their legs, haven't they? So it's very, very wealthy, was this abbey, and it had a fantastic set of bells. Apparently, they were the finest sounding bells in England. And when Henry VIII ordered the close down of this, so obviously with the dissolution of the monasteries, it was closed down in the 1530s, he decided that he wanted these bells for himself. So he sent a ship to Whitby to retrieve the bells. And people, thank you, Pauline, were really upset about this because the bells were sort of part of the character of the town, the community. And they were believed to drive away evil. So they had a really kind of distinctive quality, these bells. So the townspeople were furious. But what's even stranger is the children sort of went into a trance. And they began to sing and dance in the docks so the abbey bells were drowning. So in the meantime, the guys get on, they load the bells on to the boats, and they set sail for Whitby. And like today, it was a really calm day. But as the ship sets sail, it mysteriously sinks like a stone, and it takes the crew and the bells to the bottom of the sea. So as we look out towards the sea, now somewhere within that, there still remains this Tudor boat and the bells. And some people reportedly said that just before it sank, they saw what looked like a black dog, a large black dog, on the boat. An omen known as the Barghest, the Hound of Yorkshire, the Hound of Hell. And people soon came to associate Whitby with dark forces that persist to this day. So let me just show you a very interesting extra part of this. Thank you, Jane. That's lovely. Hi, MB. Whichever you are. So after this had been an abbey, Henry VIII then sold it to... I know someone rings the bells in Whitby, not the Abbey bells. No, you have to do sub-aqua to ring the Abbey bells, Karen, because they're still at the bottom of the sea. They've never been found. And this, once it had been sold off as an abbey, it was taken over as a private property. And it was Sir Hugh Cholmondeley, and he built this section as a rather grand house for himself, just sort of in the shadow, obviously. So I'll just turn you around here. We've got, hi Tina, we've got the ruins of the Abbey. Thank you, Joanne, that's very nice of you. And as I say, as we just pan round, hello MB, it's always a nice pleasure to have you on. We have this rather grand 17th century house. Hello, Helen. So I'll just bring you a little bit closer up here before we go and look at the church. And this is now part of the museum, so the museum shop is in here, but kind of frightfully grand. There was always plenty of money in this part of the world. There was lots of valuable land, good farming, mining, and so forth. So there was lots and lots of money. Mary lived in Maui. No snakes there. I'm not going to say I'm not a big fan of snakes. So that sounds like my kind of place. So obviously we've got a sort of slightly modern renovator, but I think this is kind of really rather nice. Look, can you see what they've done here? They've made this out of metal. I'll come in a little bit closer, so we can see very much how the original construction. So if you look by contrast, you can see that there are just sort of rectangular panes of glass in there. Obviously, what was there in its heyday was a good deal more intricate. There's quite a lot of adders in Yorkshire as well, Mark, not just in Scotland, and kind of grass states. Hi, Tish. So we've got, it is cool metal, isn't it? It's just really nice to be able to look. We've got the Borghese Gladiator. I think you can go and see him in a moment. So he's like a Roman sculpture that originated from the 18th century. And again, it was just that kind of that kind of fashionable rich was to emulate in the building the kind of neoclassical styles, but also to build a kind of Roman statue in the centre of it. It's just that kind of aspirational. And the good tastemakers looked to Rome and to Greece in this kind of period of time. So you've got what looks like an athlete. He's nude, the gladiator. And sports often were done in classical era in the nude. But isn't he wonderful? A wonderful kind of sense of movement. I'll just try and come around here and get another sense, get another picture of him, because I think he's just got that lovely, really been crafted well as a piece of art, just to get that sense of human movement in there. Hi, Isis. What a lovely name you have. And Joyce from Texas. So let's walk on. Let's go and have a look at the churchyard. So I think, it really is an amazing sight. And of course, if you're here on an evening, it begins to be lit up, which is kind of very, very beautiful. We're not going to see that tonight because the sun's not going to go down in time on this tour. But it really is a kind of magnificent sight, and it really kind of dominates the two cliffs, because what we've got in Whitby, and you kind of get a sense of the topography for those who haven't been, as we go around, it's basically a V-shaped valley. This is the Esk Valley. The River Esk runs right the way through the middle of it. Is the wall new? Can see in the ruins. Well, this is as good as we can get, because English Heritage don't allow me to film on the other side, and it's closed, Diana. So this, I'm afraid, is as much as I'm able to show you. If you want to talk to English Heritage on my behalf, that would be fantastic. But in the meantime, we have to accept the limitation that they put on it. And I say it closed at 4 o'clock, so even if they'd said yes, it would have been too late anyway. So hopefully you can get enough of a sense of it. And go on YouTube if you want to sort of see a bit more of it. There's definitely stuff up there you can have a look at, some nice kind of drone video stuff as well. So there's opportunities to have a look, but unfortunately, that's as much as I can show you from this level here. But I tell you what, I'll just stand on here. Might just get a little bit higher. Oh. It really is, I think, a very attractive aesthetically. It just works, doesn't it? You know, these kind of shapes against the sky. I think that they're very agreeable, and just as little bits, you know, like up at the top there, if you can just go in a bit closer. Lovely bits of kind of shape, just enough with the shaped stones in the window, just to give us that kind of sense of its grandeur, its kind of aesthetic appeal. It really is a glorious thing. And no, Mark, I don't know that. I mean, it may be in the Baedeker. It's not a story I've heard. But as with all the ruins, they were deliberately taken down by the Tudors to basically, it's part of the propaganda against the Catholic Church. We'll talk about that in the Museum Gardens tour of York, actually. So anyway, let's go and have a look at St Mary's Church. And we're in Whitby, absolutely. Now, for a seafaring place, you'd imagine that this graveyard would be full of sailors. This church we're looking at here, we'll tell you about that in a little bit, but it's not especially old. It's about 300 years old, somewhere in that kind of region. So much, much younger than the Abbey behind us. John, from the other side of the walls, alone, if you see you over 6 foot. Okay, Adrian, thank you. So this is the graveyard. So as I say, you'd expect sort of sailors that you'd have in this kind of community, lots of fishermen, lots of sailors, but you don't. It's quite rare, because obviously the bulk of the sailors die at sea. But actually what we have got, which is quite magnificent, is we've got a skull and crossbones tomb. And there's a local legend, thank you, Linda, that there's a pirate from Whitby that's buried here. And that this pirate was notoriously black-hearted, and he plagued the seven seas with his raids. And in one ship, he forced the captain and his wife to walk the plank. It sounds like a cliche, but this, apparently this happened. But before he does so, he made the captain's wife remove her attractive shawl, which he intended to present to his wife when he got back home to England. Now, as it was, it took many years for him to find his way back to this country. When he did so, he presented this fine silk shawl to his wife. She was so delighted with this that she decided to only wear it for Sunday best. So when the next Sunday comes around, the pirate's wife put on the shawl and went to admire herself in the mirror. But on doing so, she received this terrible shock, because staring back at her was the captain's wife. But her face was rotted from several years under the sea after being made to walk the plank. Now, the pirate's wife was transformed into hysterics and spent the rest of her days in a local asylum. This, we believe, could well be the grave of the pirate. Can you make it out? It's very difficult because it's very, very eroded, but can you see there? The skull and crossbones. Now, somebody was asking me a question there, and on these tours when I'm telling stories, I don't stop in the middle of stories to answer questions. So if you want to repeat the question now, I'll deal with it. It was something about the water, but for everybody's enjoyment, it's good to get a story through before we kind of pause and take questions. Told by a man there's more seats in Westminster Abbey, 3,000 seats. Good Lord. Inside this church. I'd be surprised at that. He may have well been pulling your leg. But anyway, let's go see the Huntrudes. The West Front was damaged during First World War shelling. Okay, interesting. Maybe a Zeppelin raid. We had Zeppelin raids in York. This is about Black Shuck. I don't know what that means, Carla. I'm sorry. We don't know, Heather. We don't know the name of the pirate simply referred to as the Whitby Pirate. So we don't know. Anyway, let me show you something that is magnificent. A wonderful story of a devoted couple that were called the Huntrudes. And this is their memorial plaque over here. And I know you're not going to see it very well. I'll just go in on Zoom, but then I'll show you an image of it so that you can see what's going on. So this is their plaque here, right? You get that? It's difficult when I'm on Zoom because you move fast. So I'll show you an image so you can see it for yourself, okay? So this is their plaque. Right. So the wonderful thing about this is it says, here lies the bodies of Francis Huntrudes and his Mary, his wife. Now get this, they were born on the same day, the week, the month, and the year. They were both born on September the 19th, 1600. They were married on the day of their birth, and after they had 12 children born to them, his wife died 80 years old on the same day of the year, September the 19th, 1680. And then 5 hours later, a husband died. And it said they were so well suited they never argued and even agreed on the day of their death, which of course was their 80th birthday and their 60th wedding anniversary. Isn't that wonderful? The story of the Huntrudes, 12 children, born on the same day, married on their 20th birthday, and then both died on their 80th birthday and their 60th wedding anniversary. So if that's not worth commemorating, I don't know what is. But let's go on and have a further look at this church here. Lovely story, isn't it? The thought of the idea that we've got a little soulmate out there. Hopefully lots of us have managed to find that soulmate. But do we believe that? Are we romantic at heart? Do we believe that there's that person? And what happens if you sort of, it's like that cross path thing, isn't it? You know, what happens if that person was there for you, but for whatever reason you didn't realise? Maybe we took the wrong step. Patty Blues it. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it, Sandy? A bit of romantic. You know, let's not be scared of romance on this tour. You know, it's nice, isn't it? We're going to tell some ghost stories as well. So, fantastic, Stephanie. There you go. It just shows, you know, you're never too old, are you? And, you know, you never know what's around the corner as well. And sometimes it's the first place you've been, sometimes it's the second or third. But hopefully we all keep on looking. Now then, Norman doorways. Now our mate Ian Braisby, he's the expert, isn't he, on Norman doorways. He loves... isn't that nice, Mark? That I'm sure that they were glad probably not to have to spend time apart. Jackie, in this graveyard here, your grandparents are fantastic. Do you know where? So, there's a great story about this, that this doorway here is a place where local gravediggers would meet every St. Mark's Eve. Now, St. Mark's Eve is the 24th of April, just before midnight. And at the stroke of midnight, there will be a procession of ghosts would appear and walk along this path. And they promptly vanish as they went down the church path. But what's interesting is the ghosts were not those that had deceased, but rather they were those that were going to meet their deaths in the next 12 months. And it's said that the gravediggers could count the ghosts and use it to know how much money they were going to earn in the next 12 months and budget accordingly. So every St. Mark's Eve, 24th of April, a parade of those who were to lose their lives over the next 12 months would walk this path and disappear. Isn't that interesting? What else have we got? Oh, Caban. So Caban's Cross is our next spot. I'll just give you a shot over the bay before we do, because it really is quite something. Jackie, there's an awful lot of graves here, so you really will want to do a bit of research first, because as you can see, unfortunately, because of the location, I don't want to pour cold water on you, but obviously an awful lot of them are simply just too far gone to be able to read. So hopefully there'll be some kind of burial plot, planning that will let you know whereabouts. Even if you can't read the individual grave, you'll be able to find the spot. So I certainly wouldn't come here just on the off chance that walking on you find it, because most of them are worn beyond be able to be legible. So, but somewhere, hopefully there will be a ledger. So let's come over here and we'll just give you a little view down the pier, because we're not going to walk down the pier because it gets too noisy with the wind. So let's show you that kind of view. So we've got a harbour here. Isn't it wonderful? Looking all the way out there. Stephanie loves the graveyard. I think a lot of people do. Beautiful, huh, Tish? It's such a wonderful place. Of course, we've got the lighthouse on the end there. Do we get close to see Whitby Cathedral? You mean the Abbey behind us? Not close up, Joyce, because it's all shut up for the day. But I'll give you a nice shot of the church. It's controlled by what they call English Heritage, Joyce, and they are notoriously protective of their assets, and so they're not going to let oiks like me come in and start filming and making money off the back of them. But nonetheless, we can still enjoy the proximity. I'll bring another section of it in here. I'll just try and frame that shot so you've got some of the church there, some of the Abbey at the same time. Oh, yeah, they're a pain in the what's-it, Sandy, to be honest. They sort of think that they're protecting everything, but what they're really trying to do is protect revenue streams, and they think that we're out to rip them off, whereas what we'd very, very happily do, of course, is do a revenue share. But there we go. Can you please show the view of the town? Yeah, you're going to get lots of that because we'll be walking down the steps very shortly, Tina, so good things come to those who wait. We will do that very, 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 very soon. Good, thank you, MB. That's nice to see. So there's the church. And what this got in here is really nice as well. It's what we call box pews, which we've also got in one church in York in the Holy Trinity. So individual boxes rather than pews, because it was cold and it was drafty. So you'd rent basically each year a box for you and your family and your servants if you have plenty of money as well. But while we're here, let's talk about Caedmon. You've heard of Caedmon, but let me just flick over for a minute just to go into the vertical. So do close your eyes if that concerns you, the movement. And I'll look at that in a second. Fran, there aren't many churches that sell box pews. Very, very few, Fran. You're absolutely right. We've got one of them in York, but mostly pulled out, because obviously they don't fit that many people in. So there's Caedmon's Cross. So I'm just going to flick you back round now. And Caedmon was a monk at the time of St Hilda. And he was an animal keeper in the monastery. So he was basically a monk in the abbey behind us. And according to the Venerable Bede, Caedmon was visited by an angel in a dream. So you can see here, there's a picture carving. This is a Victorian. This isn't sort of contemporary, but you can see it being illustrated. So he's visited by an angel in a dream and taught how to write songs. And so he becomes the first writer of English hymns. He's the first person, if you like, that introduces this idea of kind of music in England. Obviously, David has done it, historically in the Bible. But in terms of the English side of things, he's the first one that introduces. So we've got here, as you can see up there, I don't know how well you can see in this light, it's quite bright. We've got Christ at the top. We've then got David. We've then got St Hilda. And then we've got Caedmon. So it's demonstrating, if you like, this lineage, if you like, that goes straight from kind of Christ through to Caedmon, that he's been uniquely blessed to bring church and worship through song, through music, through singing, into the kind of the norms, if you like, of kind of worship. And so he's kind of the famous singer, if you like, of the church. Fine degree, that's it. So Tina was asking for a shot across the headland. We'll give you another one of those, which is pretty fab. I think you will agree. And then the town as well, which we're going to be doing plenty of as we walk down the steps in just a moment. So you can see this at various different angles, various kind of aspects. But, of course, this is the famous view across Whitby town and where the sea joins the River Esk. As I say, this is Eskdale. So the harbour has been created out here to create, of course, safe passage for ships. That's what harbours do. But once you leave the harbour, the safety of the harbour, it is a great deal more hazardous. And there have been many shipwrecks and many ships have come into trouble on this coast. So it's certainly not for the novice. We're going to talk about Captain Cook a little bit later on. And, of course, he was a pilot and a sailor that knew everything about this part of the world. Whitby's like a big city. It's actually a small town, Joyce, really. I mean, it's not a small town, it's just a regular sort of town. But I know what you're saying. It's got a feel, it covers a lot of space, but it's not really that big. Once you're here, you get a sense, actually, that it's quite compact. But it's a wonderful, just a wonderful place to be. So we're here now, and I'm sure many of you know. MB, this is about an hour hour 40 from York, something like that. So it's one of my further tours, but it's nothing too bad. And it's a really nice drive because you go right over the top of the Yorkshire Moors, and it's very, very beautiful. So Mark's on it. He knows this is famously the 199 steps. Okay? So you don't need to count them. I mean, you can if you want, but I'm not going to count them. But I guarantee I've done this the easy way. Can anybody guess why it is I do the tour this way around? Because if not, the very last thing of the tour will be able to be climbing 199 steps at the end of the tour rather than going down them at the beginning of the tour. So I think you can probably understand why it is that I've structured the tour this way around, because it could be equally valid sat on Westcliff and come to the east. But, of course, exactly, you don't really hear me huffing and puffing and panting and running out of breaths. And Natasha's absolutely right. So in order to keep track, if you're coming up and basically, you're starting to think, oh, God, how many steps are there to? You've actually got little way markers. I'm just going to find one of them for you now. Just let these people go past. And embedded into the stones are, so you have to know your Roman numerals. So those that know Roman numerals will know that is C is 100, X is 10, C is 100. So it's C is 100, 10 off 100, so 190. Absolutely marks across that. So basically every 10 steps. And what you notice as you go down is that there are these benches. And these days, the very grateful tourists will come and sit down on the benches. But actually, the benches were originally put in place for the gravediggers, because people had to be carried up these steps in the coffins. And it was known as being sided out, because four guys would go, sorry, two guys or four guys, some particularly big ones, would come up sideways. And so they'd need to kind of sit down. And that's what the benches were put in place originally. So everybody who's buried up here was carried up here, because it's only comparatively recently that the road behind the East Cliff was put in place. Historically, it wasn't there. This was the route up to the churchyard. So also wonderfully, this was where the brides would come. Okay? The tradition was for brides, to get all their wonderful kind of dresses and veils and everything, and then they'd climb the steps in the wedding dress. So thank you, Deborah. So imagine arriving at the altar, puffing and panting and out of breath. So I think you'd have to arrive plenty early, wouldn't you, to make sure that... But it's continued, and so lots and lots of people that get married here still continue that. So it's not a strange sight, exactly sweaty. So, Stephanie, if you've not thought yet about a location for a marriage, can I recommend you think about Whitby and coming up the steps in your wedding dress? Wouldn't that be fun? And can I film it? Can we do it live on Hago? So I think we've all agreed that now. So thanks for that, Stephanie. We'll do that. Just let me know where and when. So this, of course, is... great. This is one of the famous seats. So again, we can see where we are in relation to the steps there. So CLX, so 140 from here. So yeah, brides coming up here. Also, there's a wonderful kind of English eccentricity about this. In 1892, there was a guy that hopped up here on one leg, which is just kind of nice, isn't it? It's called George Broderick. So we're going down at a pretty slow rate because I'm helping you to enjoy the scenery. But the fastest way down here, well, you mentioned about death coming down, Joy, is the Barguest coach. Now, on the rare occurrences, it's said that a sailor was actually buried in the churchyard at St Mary's, because most are buried or lost at sea. A spectral carriage known as the Barguest carriage would appear near the Abbey. And it was described as being an ornate black coach that was drawn by six black horsemen, six black horses and two demonic headless horsemen carrying flaming torches. And the coach was set off at a ferocious pace and arrived with a shuddering halt at the grave of a newly buried sailor. And the doors of the coach would then open, and out would step two ghostly mourners. They'd solemnly circle the grave 3 times, and at which point the body of the dead sailor would rise up from the coffin. The sailor would say his farewells to the graveside mourners before stepping inside the coach. And the coach would then set off with a tremendous haste, weaving its way down the graveyard and hurtling down these 199 steps before making a sharp right turn at the bottom before entering the sea and taking the sailor to his final resting place at the bottom of the ocean. Sailors weren't designed to die on land. They were designated to die at the bottom of the ocean. Move an upright the lamppost and the steps, please. Diana, yes, I think we can do that for you. So just bear with. And let's just spin your eyes. So close your eyes if you get the motions. And let's go down a few steps to give Diana the sort of shot, hopefully, that she's looking for. And I hope we're all doing lots and lots of snapping. Perfect postcard tour for you this evening. I'll just swing it around there so you can get it to yourself. And we'll do it from the other side as well. So just bear with me 1 minute. We'll just give you another vertical shot. Looking down. How cute is that? The answer is very, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And I'll just flip us around again so we can get that shot. So this is probably, along with that house in Thornton Dale I was talking to you about, we showed you the other week, this is just one of the famous pictures of Yorkshire. Everybody just loves this view. Photographers come here and they'll stand here trying to capture sunrise, sunset. Exactly, it's just, what was on the I think that is an air measure thing. I think. Catherine, is that Catherine that does the wonderful watercolours? But on Facebook. If it is, very talented, very impressed with your painting. Oh, good, Catherine. So hopefully, because Catherine did a lovely picture of the cottage at Thornton Dale, so hopefully you were similarly inspired to do something from today's tour. As you can see, one of the pleasure boats coming in to the harbour there. Just going a bit bigger, and you can get so those that want to can take a little trip around the bay. Maybe we could do that on a future tour. But don't know, obviously, what the signals will be like out that way. Thank you, KCM. So let's kind of keep walking. So it would be fun, wouldn't it? A little trip around the harbour. Let's see what the 4G looks like as we kind of go down. And hopefully, it's the sort of thing I'll have to come down, really, and obviously spend a few hours here and do it. Got the shot black and white. Oh, fantastic. It's one of the classic, English, British, whatever you want to call it. Vistas, isn't it? It's just, and it just says Yorkshire. As soon as you show it, people know it's Whitby. And, it's just, as I say, what can you say? These things aren't wildly popular for no reason. They just appeal to us, don't they? There's something about that aesthetic that just appeals to so many of us. On the pirate boat, we're going to have a look at Endeavour in a little bit. So we're coming down to the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, Catherine is very... Thank you, Linda. Bark Endeavour, absolutely. Oh, is that right, Amanda? Your dad's the narrator. Well, perhaps we can get your dad on a future tour to talk about, because obviously last time we came here, we went in the Cook Museum. I don't know if anybody who's on here went on that tour. It was good fun. That's an early morning one, that one. But we enjoyed that one. Aesthetic, absolutely stunning. It's beautiful, isn't it? So, yeah, it's always difficult to fit stuff in, and we all, thank you, Fran. We all miss... Oh, Gabby, on the Riveresque. Okay. Is the pie shop still at Whitby? I don't know, Mike. If you tell me about whereabouts it was, if I can tell you if we're going to be passing that route. Aren't they lovely, the lamps as well? They've got such a lovely sort of style to them. And, of course, they double up with signposts as well, sort of letting us know where we are. So just another look before we head into the old town, really. Just look, thank you, Stephen. Just look out there into the harbour. And it's like a pair of arms, isn't it? That kind of protect us. Oh, I do know what you mean, Amanda. We're going to walk past there. It was when I was here in September last time. So I would anticipate the answer is yes. But let's wait until we get... Because we're going to go down this road here. And at the end of this road, we're going to come round by exactly where you're talking about. So we will find out at that point. So having now kind of left the headland, would fishing here be for cod? Well, yes, but not inland. You have to go quite a long way out sort of, into the North Sea. To get the prime sort of fishing grounds. So we're sort of coming into now, those that haven't been before, just the absolute charm of the town. Having sort of seen the wild exposed headlands, the wonderfully atmospheric kind of churchyard, abbey ruins, we're now sort of passing down into one of the most charming towns in Yorkshire. And of course, it's most famous for its wonderful natural find here, which is Whitby Jet. Now, I don't know if we all know about Jet, but Jet is... Let me get you a picture of some Jet first, so we can see what we're talking about, because right now a lot of this is amber in here. So Jet... here's some Jet, right. So Jet, not surprisingly, is jet black. That's where the expression comes from. Jet black is jet. And it is very, very highly polished. And we treat it as though it's a gemstone. But actually, it's organic. And it comes from fossilised wood. For some reason, there's not a lot of jet in the window, which is not entirely helpful for a jet shop. But there you go. Maybe there's been a space. Here we are. So perhaps you'll see a little bit better there. And it's compressed wood that then is highly shined. And believe it or not, it takes at least 1 million years to form under the pressure, under the water pressure, under the sea. And sometimes that might be 20 million years. And so it's so intensely black, we've got the expression jet black, something that is very, very black. And it is suddenly beautiful. And it became really popular for jewellery in, yes, it's water pressure. So underneath the sea, in the sort of silt layers, Polly, the water pressure pushes together wood to form this material. It takes at least 1 million years, but often as much as 20 million or even 100 million years. And it started getting very, very popular during Queen Victoria's era because, of course, absolutely Mark's right. She went through this very long public form of mourning after the death of Prince Albert, her husband. She dressed exclusively in black. And so, of course, she wanted decorative black jewellery to frame, what the outfit she was wearing and so forth. So Whitby jet was used extensively over about 20 or so years by Queen Victoria. And, of course, where Queen Victoria led, society followed. So it quickly became very, very desirable. Mike, the Stoke Gallery is closed down. It's just online, so that's no longer with us, which is a shame, I think. But it's a wonderful thing, Whitby Jet. We've got a Whitby Jet shop on the Shambles in York as well, so it's not just here. There's another one over here, look, jet black, so we can see, hopefully, without the grills, a bit easier for you to get. So here we are. So you see, very, very kind of... it depends, Jet. It can be. I mean, let's look here. You can sort of see the prices on here. So these crucifix earrings, £89. So, it's not cheap, but it's not excessively expensive, £88. So I think it's affordable. If you decided that you wanted a piece of Whitby Jet, I think it's within most of ours. We said it's a special treat, an anniversary present, that sort of thing. It's doable. But you have to be careful with Jet because there are some, not fake stuff, but some poor quality stuff around. And also it's illegal to go sourcing it. So it can only be found as you washed up. So you can scavenge for jet, but you can't mine for it. It is very, very controversial. Is going for jet because obviously what you do is in order to get to it, you have to damage the sort of ocean floor, and so of course that's where lots of animals and marine life live. So consequently, that's completely banned. So the biggest piece that ever was washed up was actually huge. It weighed well over a ton. It's about 20 feet long. So it's getting increasingly rare for it to kind of pop up now. So it's not as available as it once was. So I suspect over time it will go up. But of course, what there is an awful lot of vintage jet, a lot of antique jet, and that's now the most desirable stuff, not so much the new stuff. There you go. So Dolores, is that? No. Anyway, from Seattle. Right, so getting a hand-me-down, something that was part of your family's heritage, that's what people really want now, the antique jet. So this, by the way, is the Wesleyan Chapel, and there is a big association with Methodism and Whitby. John Wesley came here and he preached very, very extensively. It is another gorgeous town, isn't it? And so he kind of left his mark, and there's an awful lot of nonconformism in rural areas and coastal areas. But John Wesley came here, visited the town on many, many occasions, and they built a number of chapels that would house huge congregations to come and hear him talk. So that, as I say, rebuilt in 1901, but they're a big impact. And I'm just wondering what's happened to the gateway to Argumentary Yard. It seems to be closed off for a time. Oh, no, here it is. I do beg your pardon. I thought I'd missed it. So the wonderfully named Whitby is full of yards, and the yards basically are alleyways that then lead out onto sort of courtyards. But none is more splendidly named than Argument's Yard. And you might think this is a place to go when you're for a little ding-dong. You just sort out your differences, or for people that just can't live alongside one another, would come and live here. But actually, believe it or not, Arguments is actually the name of the family. There is still quite a few members of the Arguments family living here in this area, and so they have the distinct honour of their own yard. Now, there's about 80 of these yards, but I'm going to show you a really, really nice one. Blackburn's yard, which is just down here. It's a while since I've been here, so you just excuse me for a minute. Yeah, so yes, Julia. Julia's asking, are they private courtyards? And you're absolutely right, they are. This is Blackburn's yard, this one. And so nowadays, these places are des res. So this is Blackburn's yard. There's about 80 of these yards. And basically, what they are was the original construction was to build up the hillsides to basically enable people to live, if you like, on the cliffsides, to deal with the topology of the landscape. So you can see there are different sort of gradients, different kind of levels. And these have become incredibly desirable places to live. Really beautiful places to live. You know, lots of holiday lets down here, lots of second homes. These are, really, really... But in their heyday, they were slums. Be in no doubt whatsoever. You might have something in the region of 30 to 40 families living in a courtyard of this size. Massively overcrowded, cramped, insanitary living conditions. And so the kids would spill out. You'd have a tin bath, they'd wash out here, they'd play out here. So the yard, if you like, was, if you like, the focal point for social interaction because people just didn't have the space inside. Yeah, it's Heidi, isn't it? It's wonderful kind of architecture. Oh, fantastic. I'm really delighted that you're happy with the quality. It's always nice to be able to give a good video and audio experience as well, of course, as hopefully good content as well. So, as I say, absolutely delightful now, but just on so many of these places that we go to and we talk about, what today we look at as beautiful aesthetics hide a darker past of abject poverty, of overcrowding, of people living without fresh water, without access to facilities. But, of course, what was once very plain and Spartan seems to us now stunningly beautiful. Yeah, lots of wows. It's just that sort of place, if you haven't been, hopefully this is something towards giving you a sense of it's just delightful. And I think a lot of you are starting to recognise now how fortunate I am to be based in the north of England. Of course, the south is wonderful too, in the Midlands and Wales and Scotland. But we have treasures beyond measure, I think, in this part of the world. And it is such a delight to be able to leisurely take you to these places and just walk around and just allow you to kind of soak up. Absolutely, Sandy. So many places that are converted to gentrification, if you like, But, of course, with that comes the challenge. You've got a place that runs on service industries, but then it's expensive for people to live here. So how do you square that circle? Where do you get the staff from to work in the tea shops, in the cafes, in the hotels, in the bars, if they can't afford to live here? So, there's always this tension in kind of managing, isn't it? But at the same time, let's not look for the negatives, when we can celebrate just how stunningly beautiful so much of Yorkshire is. We are incredibly fortunate in what we have here. And great people as well, too. Don't sort of, let's not lose sight of that. We've got wonderful populations. Thank you, Linda. I didn't know it was your first tour with me. You're very welcome to join me. It's a nice one to start with in Whitby, to get off the mark in Whitby. That's not a bad one to start with. But here we're at the marketplace now. So again, what's nice about this tour is everything's all close together. We don't have to go far. And isn't this just divine? So this is the marketplace. And still to this day, it's used as markets. When I was walking down here just a little bit early, just to kind of walk in, remind myself of the route, there were still stalls here. So this is used every day, extensively, as a place where market traders will come. You can see formerly up here, there was a window. And what we know is this was the courtroom. And it's a little town hall. And this dates from 1640. But most of this building is from 1788. So the upper floor up here was the courts, the absinthe of it. And if you're found guilty of crimes, over here in the market square is where both the stocks were and where whippings would take place. So in the marketplace. So again, it's this idea of this very visible forms of punishment. People being seen that they've transgressed, they've broken the rules, and be punished in public. So the stocks and the whipping are here, right in the centre. Hello, Sam from Scotland's joined us. That's always nice to have fellow guides on. I'm sure you don't be telling about what a great storyteller Sam is. If you've yet to discover her charms, do look her up in Edinburgh, Stirling and various other places that she traverses in Scotland. I'll just bring up the zoom there so you can see the plaque. And again, it's a Cholmondeley family who, of course, owned the St Mary's, St Hilda's Abbey up at the top, where we were earlier. So that's how you spell that name, Cholmondeley. But let me go say, there's a fantastic pub around here. Has anybody been to the White Horse and Griffin? Because I know quite a lot of you on here now are Whitby veterans. Many of you have been here. So have anybody been to the White Horse and Griffin pub? It's Whitby's most famous pub. And it was originally constructed in... So Emma loves it. Fantastic. Anybody else been? There's a reason I'm going to ask you this. Because it's not everybody feels the same way. Lynn did. Okay. So it was originally constructed in 1691. It's just coming into our view now. And it was on the Whitby to York coach run. So basically, Whitby was a desirable place. Thank you, Kim. That's very good of you. And so here we are. So the White Horse and Griffin. I'm just going to go around and give you a vertical shot. So just close your eyes if that concerns you. There we are. You can see the White Horse and Griffin. Yes, Kate, it is a lovely place to be. It's very, very aesthetically pleasing. I'll spin you back around. And this is in White Horse Yard. So again, another one of the courtyards. See a fantastic old lobster pot up there. So that's a sign up. The White Horse and Griffin. And because this was Whitby's most fashionable hotel, many celebrities of the day stayed here. So you can see here the old sign up for the White Horse Hotel. Good stabling, smoke and club rooms. Thank you, Mark. And so this is why you get very, very high gateway, so you could get the coaches and horses who could pass their way through. And what we've got, really, is, again, a fantastic courtyard. But in its day, this used to be covered with oyster shells. They sold so many oysters here, people ate them, that it was covered in shells. And so when Charles Dickens stayed here, he was kind of really struck with this. But although the one who really kind of picked up on it was Lewis Carroll, because he stayed here when he was writing Alice novels. And so the Walrus and the Carpenter, which was about eating oysters, was inspired by his stay here. So you can see here, look, the first stagecoach from York to Whitby in 1788 operated from this inn. Bet it smelled awful. Yeah, well, it wouldn't have smelled too good, would it? But, there are lots of them, so they just covered the walls. So Dickens stayed here, Tennyson, Bram Stoker, all the kind of celebrities of the day would come and stay here because this was a very desirable place to stay. So a lot more upmarket than the other yards and courtyards that were spoken about. But, of course, now it's been converted. They've been knocked down. This would have been stabling, of course. So where these cottages are now as infilled, at one time would have been places for the horses. Thank you, Polly and Julie. It's very good of you. So let's keep walking. Again, though, just how nice is it here? We're just so fortunate. Now, Dickens just stated there's no reference to Dickens writing anything here, just merely that he was another fan of Whitby. So many people have been over the years. So he came and he stayed here, and we know he stayed right here where we're standing. So I don't know that there's any particular literary inspiration it gave him, but certainly what we do know, as I say, is Lewis Carroll penned the poem The Walrus and the Carpenter after being inspired by the oyster shells that he saw outside his bedroom window. Thank you, Alison. And Shane from the Bay Area has just joined us. You're very welcome from San Francisco to North Yorkshire coast. It's nice to join hands across the world. So, we have a town called Whitby in Ontario. Oh, really? Well, I mean, that so many places, aren't they? In North America, are named after places that people knew over here. Maybe it made them feel a bit less homesick. Who knows? Or why come up with new names when there's perfectly good ones? But it does seem that lots and lots of places. Of course, New York being the most famous of them all. The time has come. It's really quite sad, isn't it? That they all come along the oysters and don't realise they're going to get eaten. And then the sort of which one has the remorse at the end? Is it the Carpenter or the Walrus? One of them doesn't give a stuff, but the other one sort of feels quite guilty. Lots of fish and chip, absolutely, Isis. We're right on the kind of fish and chip land. Now, something else about pie, and I think this is what you were talking about. So Newcastle, oh there, yeah, Newcastle, Delaware, exactly. So Newcastle, UK, Newcastle, Delaware. So lots and lots of these kind of links, old country names. So somebody was talking about this, weren't they? The humble pie shop. Ah, 'twas brillig and the slyly toasted, guiding gimble in the wave, all mimsy with the bother groves, and the moon rusted out grabe. Mark, just for you. These are the sorts of things we memorise as children. Jabberwocky. So that's, who was asking about this? Was that Alison D? Was it you that was pleased? Yep, pie mash, absolutely. So not particularly traditional Yorkshire fare, has to be said, but one in Whitby, why not? Thank you, Linda. So come out to the harbour, and of course it is now time to talk about one of those famous sons. So, this building here, the red one with the scaffolding, is the home of the Cook Memorial Museum. And we went in this the last time, we're not going in today. So James Cook was born on the 7th of November in 1728 in a village about 20 miles away. And he was the second of 8 children. His father was a farm labourer, so he didn't come from particularly high stock, but his father's employer paid for James to attend a local school. But he never really received a formal education as such. And at the age of 16, he moved to Staithes to take up an apprenticeship as a shop boy. But it seems, frustrated librarian, it seems that his imagination was easily bored with James Cook. He couldn't really focus on the mundane, and apparently he spent his days just gazing out to sea, dreaming of escape. And so, I'm a birthday buddy, number 7 out of 10. Okay, I don't know what that means. But after 18 unhappy months, he quits his apprenticeship, okay, and he moves to Whitby. And he moves here. He's taken into this household. He's an apprenticeship, and this is the house of John and Henry Walker. And these guys are prominent ship owners. And they're involved in the coal trade. So there's a lot of coal mining in this area, particularly obviously in the northeast. We were friends on earlier talking about the northeast. Big coal mining area. And so the movement of coal by ship from the northeast down to the industrial Midlands and the south was a really kind of lucrative business. That's what John and Henry Walker were involved in. So this is his introduction, if you like, to the maritime life, to the sea life. So Cook spends 5 years piloting vessels, moving coal from the Tyne to London. But he also studies and manages a ghost hunt at the Captain Cook Museum. Wow, fantastic. That sounds ace. So you can see here the date of this, originally built in 1688. I'd like to know a bit about the history of it. So alongside learning his navigation, his ship skills, he learns all about mathematics, geometry, navigation, astronomy. He really he crams on a night. He works by day, and then by candlelight, you can imagine him. You know, he's top little bunker. Those of you remember coming into this, he had a really small room right at the top with the other apprenticeships, with the other apprentices. So imagine sitting in poor light by candlelight, night after night, with his nose in a book, learning his craft. But that's what James Cook does. His portrait over here. And he becomes an exemplary sailor. They really go on to serve him well, these apprenticeship years. But let's kind of walk down. Now, I'm hoping, I didn't get a chance to check before this, that I can show you some we referred to earlier. Yes, we can. Do you remember the story that I told you about St. Hilda? The snakes. She whipped them, they fell off the cliff, and then she was able to get on with building the Abbey. And people were convinced this story was true, because at the bottom of the cliffs, they found, yes, absolutely, Joy, the same one. We'll pick up that story a little bit later on. So hold that thought. Why is it they thought there were dead snakes at the bottom of the cliffs? Because of these fantastic fossils. They're found here at the bottom, and then the ammonites, absolutely. So you can see how people would think they were snakes, right? Aren't they wonderful? I mean, look at the size of it. I mean, that thing must be, well over a foot from one side to the other. So you can really see how it was when these things were found actually in the stone, how these early Christians would have taken this story about the snakes dying, becoming fossilized, as literally true. It kind of makes sense, right? It's very, very easy to see why you'd find that story so compelling and so believable when so many of these fossils were found nearby. So it was a fantastic, kind of rich geological site, is this, for all sorts of of reasons. Come to Whitby if you can, if you get the chance. If not, just come on these tours and we'll do the best we can to give you an inkling of kind of what's here. But there is so much to enjoy here. There's so much to dig into, whether it is the gothic, the dark stuff, the ghost stories that you like, whether it's the kind of fishing, the kind of the maritime. There's so much here to get interested in the local culture. Time fish, absolutely. I'm definitely going to eat some fish and chips now. But we're about to go over the Esk Bridge, which I'll show you in a minute. But I just thought I'd show you this rather fine fisherman bit of public art over here. Who's looking wonderful. Population, Elizabeth, I think it's not huge. 30,000 is what I've got in my head. Somewhere in that. I may be overshooting it. I don't know. Because it's very difficult because it's part of Scarborough Borough as well. So whether the figures are just for the town or the surrounding area, I don't know. But not huge. Not by any stretch. So this is the famous swing bridge. You can see here. And this is over the Esk. And the reason for the swing bridge, of course, is it allows the high-masted vessels to be able to come through. What, of course, it does mean is a compromise between the convenience of the car and the needs of shipping and harbour access. So often it needs to come to something of a standstill while the ships come through. But this bridge opened in 1909. The earliest record of a bridge here is in 1351 when Edward III grants permission for the payment of tolls for maintenance. So there's been a bridge here for at least 700 years, but this one, 14,000, okay, thank you, Anne. This one dates from 1909, but famously, of course, this is a swing bridge. There are quite a lot of technical problems with this swing bridge right now, so it keeps having problems to keep mending it. And I think it's sort of coming towards the end of this. At some point, Lisa, I'll be repeating it, but it probably won't be for a while because it's quite a long way from my home, so I only come once or twice a year. But yes, I'll definitely come again at some point. Just give you a nice harbour view of that. And it's thank you, John. Surprisingly busy actually for this time of the evening. But again, just a lovely way. So I say as it goes inland, in effect, it becomes the sort of river-esque. Yes, the polar bear is just up there. I don't know what it signifies, but the polar bear of Whitby. Mark, we're right on the other side of the bridge now, so I'm already kind of behind on time, so if it's okay, I'm just going to push on. Because there's another white sculpture down here that I'll show you, so I'm going to make it up to you, Mark. But we're already kind of behind, so I don't want to kind of run us too late. But there's another one just here. So, yeah, next time, Mark, next time. So, obviously you can see now we're coming into, this one's called New Quay Road, and this is kind of the main fishing area. Although, of course, most of the boats here now are much more orientated towards leisure and kind of fishing trips than they are sort of commercial fishing. But here is another one. And this, of course, as you can see here, is a fisher wife. Fish wife, is that the way you put it? And what you can see, of course, down here is a great basket of fish. Crab at the top there, can you see? Look, she's got crabs, or like herrings to me. I think March wanted another shot of the man like this. And, of course, on top of the barrel here, she's filleting. So her job, of course, is to take the catch and turn it into saleable fish, which, of course, would have been very much a live occupation for many, many people. So fishing emerges here during the kind of Middle Ages. And herring and whales are the two kind of main catchers. So there are one or two registered fishing boats that operate still from here, but for the most part, the boats you'll see now are much more orientated towards pleasure boats, but also sea fishing. So lots of people like to go out with the rods for a day, obviously, and go out and catch fishwife, yes. So you see the lovely flags, but as I say, most of this now, so here you have a 3-hour fishing trip, if you so wish to go out to sea. Sometimes a mackerel being caught out there as well, lovely fresh mackerel from out in the sea, but everything really now is orientated towards the leisure industry rather than being a meaningfully fishing port, which of course historically that's what this was. The lobster pots we're going to see in a minute, so I'm just trying to give you sort of centre of the harbour. And again, it's just lovely, isn't it? You know, aesthetically. 3 hours at sea. Wouldn't be Alex wouldn't like that, would he? He's notoriously not so good with his sea legs, so I think he'd probably find that a bit of a struggle. But yeah, Moby Dick, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting story for those who haven't come across it. Yes, lots of boats bringing in the timber. Interesting. So we're talking about Frank Meadows Sutcliffe. There's lots of photos that he took down here. Famous Victorian photographer that was very interesting, capturing sort of everyday life, not just the rich people. He was just as interested. Look at the size of these gulls, these Arctic gulls, of which there are many. And they are pretty vicious. If you're standing here with an ice cream or a pasty, expect them to take you off. Yes, KCM loves Frank Meadows Sutcliffe. If you've not seen him, look him up. So these are lobster pots. So many of you, I'm sure, in the New England area will know all about lobster. Absolutely, it's not a great idea. And the pots are used on a daily basis, so they are here. But of course, what we have got here is the recreation of James Cook's first command ship, HMS Bark Endeavour. I'm just trying to get a couple of postcards here with the lobster pots as we go a little bit closer in. We'll try and get both of those in shot, just to give you a bit of... Isn't that magnificent? So this is a fantastic replica of Endeavour. And the ship Endeavour was actually built here in Whitby and was purchased by the Royal Navy in 1764 for the purpose of scientific search, and specifically the secret search for Australia. So believe it or not, Australia, or Terra Australis, was as much a theory as it was a reality. And I don't know if you know this, but the reason they were very, very keen to secure Terra Australis was they were looking for new colonies. Not for people to settle, but rather for convicted criminals. I'm just coming around this side so I can just get us back around. Because by the time this was going, it was very, very clear that holding on to America was not a long-term prospect. And they were using America as a place to send the convicts. So Captain Cook, unbeknownst to him, his job was to scout a new location to send the convicts. Now, Cook had served with distinction in the 7 Years' War and during the siege of Quebec. So Endeavour and Cook set sail from Plymouth on the 26th of August 1768 in a boat that looked very, very similar to this. So bearing in mind that Cook was at sea for about 3 years, it's not especially big, is it? When you look at it, I mean, it's sizable, but imagine that the privation must have been fairly substantial. You can't get that much going on. Bark's up ships. It's the Bark Endeavour. What's with a drunken soldier? Okay, and it's not full size. Okay, fair enough. But nonetheless, even so, with 3 years at sea, they'd be very, very careful what they took, what they weren't to take. And what we do know is that Cook was the first person to successfully navigate around Cape Horn, so the bottom there of South Africa, and enter the Pacific. And he was also a very accomplished, or him and his colleagues, cartographers. They were quite literally drawing the map on the way round. They were creating new information, new knowledge for the British forces, British maritime, and so forth, because this was largely uncharted territory by the British. Other nations had been down there. This was the first time really the Brits had been able to fully get down and access these routes. So he claimed many of these islands for Great Britain. This is where it's controversial, of course, that basically, you know, we laid claim and said, okay, that's ours now. We discovered it. So he continues on to Tahiti and New Zealand. So we're just saying about Ruth. Yep, there we go. And he reaches the southeastern coast of Australia on the 19th of April, 1770, after he'd been at sea for nearly 2 years. Now, at the time, until comparatively recently, he was said to have discovered Australia. And of course, this is bunkum. He's merely the first European, really, to have visited that land. He went ashore at Botany Bay. So he's really the first European on Australian soil. And he made contact with the Aboriginal tribe and established relations with the chief. And after an eventful journey back across the Indian Ocean that saw Cook claim the entire subcontinent for Britain, Cook and Endeavour finally returned to the UK on the 12th of July 1771. Cook immediately published his memoirs and he becomes a huge national hero. Very interesting to us. So let's pause the story there. We're going to come back to Cook when we get to the top. But I want to talk about another element of maritime life at Whitby as we now start to walk up. And we're horribly late and behind time. So this tour is going to run long. But hopefully you're all enjoying it. And it's because there's so much to see here that I keep slowing it down so we can get some more postcards. But if you're not in a rush, do stick around. And I think we're scheduled for 75 minutes. It's probably more like 90 before it's finished. So we're going down now. It's about smugglers. So obviously smuggling and coasts have this intertwined history. And of course smuggling really is about avoiding taxation, right? Because everything about the state is about putting its clauses in it and saying, we want our piece, right? Whatever it is, we want to pay import taxes, whether it's rum, whether it's foods, whatever it is. And smugglers take a different view. Smugglers say, it's ours, we're not paying you anything. And Whitby has been associated with smuggling for centuries. So tax collectors and customs were often based here. And so they had to go to really... Can you go back to the ice cream cone? I didn't see where the ice cream cone was, Joey. So I'm a bit behind, so I hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to push on. And we'll maybe see something else like that along the way. So the tax officials were based here, and they're constantly trying to keep one step ahead. But in reality, they really, really struggled with the smugglers. They couldn't keep a handle on it because the smugglers were just basically too smart. And there were very many tunnels that were built. I'm just looking for... Is it just a little bit further down here? So the smugglers need to find ways to avoid the customs points. So they dug in tunnels. I apologise, I think it's down here. If not, we'll just turn around and go the other way. It's a while since I've been here, so I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure it's just down here. There's a pub here, the Smuggler's Arms, which basically had, it said, a tunnel that ran basically from the quayside into the pub. And this is where the smugglers would meet to share out, if you like, their ill-gotten gains. And yes, it's here. It's a wonderful pub. Look at this. Isn't that a wonderful building here? Thank you, Candice. Thank you, Sue. So yeah, this is called Baxter Gate, and so there's a tunnel that runs to this pub under the shoreline. And this pub dates back to 1401. It's called the Old Smuggler Pub. It's no longer a pub, unfortunately. It's a cafe, but isn't that one of the cutest things you ever saw? So that is the Old Smuggler Pub, as was. And because they couldn't always agree on the splits, and there were many fights between the smugglers, it is wonderfully known as Loggerheads Yard. So to be at Loggerheads is to be in an argument. So a bit of washed up ship ephemera over here. So smugglers were really they were well liked because of course they had the contraband, they had stuff that people wanted. But of course, duck or grouse, absolutely, you'll get that. You know, it's not very tall. If I stand here next to it, and just sort of turn around so you can see me. I'll do that for you, Tina. You see there? So I would very much grouse if I just walk. There we go. Is there really loggerheads? There you go. So the smugglers were really popular with the people because obviously they had what people wanted. But of course they had to protect it. And one of the popular places for hiding them was in graves. So often they would put them in graves where people were buried. They would put contraband in there. But then of course they need to actually get it back out. So actually seeing people in graveyards at nights digging up graves to access contraband may well have driven many of the stories that we associate with Whitby, with strange movements after dark in graveyards. So, it may be that that's actually part of the reason why people were so ready to believe these stories are supernatural here, because actually it was the work of the smugglers going to retrieve their ill-gotten gains. And people just love the stories here, the stories of the Barghese Hound and the ghost just seem to be part of the kind of cultural life of the town. People just enjoy and rejoice in these stories of kind of darkness. So there's something about the place. And of course that's really why it was that Bram Stoker found it such a compelling place to write his most famous novel. But we'll come to that in just a few minutes, because absolutely, Stephanie, everyone loves a good spooky story, and why wouldn't we at the end of the day? Being scared when you're safe is great fun. Being scared when you're not safe, when you don't know if you're safe, a lot less fun. But, we all love it, don't we, when we're kids, pulling up the covers, Doctor Who when we were kids and being scared. It's like, and it's lovely walking around at night, as Lynn says. It's lovely. So we're going to go back to the gate now. So we'll start going uphill. So unfortunately, this is where I get a bit out of puff. You can see what kind of shape I'm in, because the one thing about Whitby is if you ain't going up, you're going down, or vice versa. So there you can see right at the top now, the church. Midnight to 2. Lynn, you are a night owl, aren't you? If that's the hours that you keep, you dirty stuff out of you. So there, you may well, of course, be able to absolutely ghosties and ghoulies and wee timorous beasties and things that go bump in the night. I believe it's Robert Burns. A wonderful bit of verse. I will live there today, of course. So there we go. So let's go back to the gate. So this is where you'll see now what kind of shape I'm in, because we've got to go uphill now. And young and fearless, Elaine, I'm sure you still are. Fearless, if not quite as young as you once were. And up at the top of here, we've got another of these wire sculptures. So Mark, again, apologies you missed out on the repeat, but there's another one here. So hopefully that road's a killer, says Joanne. Yeah, you certainly start to feel it very, very quickly in your legs. It has to be said. Absolutely. Get in shape. So here is another one. So this time we've got a fisherman, and he's adjusting his nets. See this tool that he has in his hand here? He's doing mending, repair work, and maintenance. Hi, Tanya. From Moscow. Is that Tanya the guide? Doing maintenance work on his net, so try and get the bin out of it, not especially aesthetically pleasing. You have a bin in your postcard, so there we go. There's our chap. Not a place for a walker. Well, if you're a stout, keen walker, then absolutely is the place for you. But for those, as I say, that are perhaps not as mobile as they once were, you would definitely find out here your limitations. It is a place of ups and downs. So we were talking earlier about Methodists, and here is the oldest Unitarian Chapel here, look. And this was founded, who is this? It was just a sailor. They're anonymous. There isn't really a particular place. They're just people that kind of represent, if you like, people. How long has this actually been there? They're fairly recent, Pamela. I would say they've been there the last sort of 10 years. So this is the Unitarian Chapel here. And Unitarians and Methodists were closely linked. And so Whitby is the home of, at that time, the UK's Unitarian movement. And believe it or not, the Unitarian movement started in Transylvania. So if you're wondering about links to vampires, Eastern Europe, or the Carpathians, it starts here at the Flowergate Unitarian Chapel. So, there we go. Let's just walk up, because we are a little bit, well, more than a little bit, we are horribly behind time. But that's my bad, not yours, Anita. So we're not going to worry too much. We'll just apologise in advance to any other guides that are missing you guys. But hopefully, I'll just put it on for an hour and a half next time. I thought, it was an hour last time, I made an hour and 15. I think we'll make it an hour and a half next time. And just be honest. So yeah, this is Flowergate. And like York, of course, links to the Vikings. And so, of course, that is very noticeable in the name of gate. No, it's editor. Oh, right, fantastic. So, what, the end of my tour time, or is this one Cliff Street? Yeah. So this is Cliff Street, which is a very famous part. So Flowergate is one of the oldest streets. We're just coming off there. So this street here actually is mentioned in the Doomsday Book. But it's a good deal older. I mean, Whitby was settled by the Violas. A nice shot of the Abbey up there. It was settled by Vikings. We know, obviously, the Abbey was here in the 7th century. So there's a long history here. But this was mentioned in the Doomsday Book. And the poet and Russian, where'd that come from? Ambassador to the UK for America, James Russell Lowell, stayed here. And in a letter he wrote in 1899, he said, "This is the 9th year of visiting Whitby, and the place loses none of its charm for me." I think we can kind of see where he's coming from. So he would stay in a house just down here. And so the following year, in 1900, Whitby's most famous ever visitor arrived and created a legend and the novel Dracula, of which a significant portion of it is set in Whitby. So Bram Stoker arrived at Mrs. Vesey's guest house at 6th Royal Crescent, Whitby. So we're going to finish up right at the end of the tour. We'll go and see where Bram Stoker stayed. And he stayed there at the end of July in 1890. He was actually the business manager of the actor Henry Irving. Oh, this is still here. This is nice. We'll just pause there for a second. I'll just show you the... Whitby can get very cold and windy at times. Yeah, absolutely, of course. So let me show you this lovely... I don't know why this Alice in Wonderland garden is here, but it does frame beautifully. So you can see here the cards, and it is... I don't know the significance as to why this garden is here. It's only been here for a couple of years. I don't know if it's a kind of Whitby in Bloom thing, but or maybe it's because obviously of Lewis Carroll and his links to the town, which I guess I've had some question there, haven't I? But it's a new addition. It's really rather nice. Yes, the bells are ringing in the background, Karen. You can probably hear that. So we've got the Mad Hatter's hat, of course, in the middle there, and a lovely stop on the headland there, of course, of the church and the Abbey. So you can see we're sort of on the other side of the V of the valley now. So we're walking up the other side now. So all the rest of this is kind of uphill as we go up to the top, and we see the famous whalebones and the statue of Captain Cook. But isn't it lovely? So I'll just show you a little bit more of this, and then we will head our way to the top. This is the point. It's so easy to get distracted here. Quite how you're meant to do a tour on time here, I've got no idea, because there's just so many delightful distractions that you just look at it and go, oh, I've got to show them this, I've got to show them this. I'd feel like I was stealing from you if I didn't. So, isn't it? It's beautiful, Mark, isn't it? We'll work out a bit of craftsmanship, isn't it, has gone into that. You know, it's really... It's a wonderful bit of art, but of course as well, what a fab place to sit. You know, you're sitting there, I'll just give you the view when you're coming here on your holidays. Sit there and look at that. It's not bad, is it? It's not a bad place to spend some time of a sunny afternoon, is it? You hear the seagulls, I'm sure. Bronwyn likes it, it's cold, well, at least it keeps the numbers of people down. So I believe there's something from the books there. So, yeah, I like it here. It's a nice little addition. Wasn't here before. But anyway, let's quickly show you these other two benches, and then we'll get back to the story of Dracula. Bram Stoker is my granddaughter's boyfriend's second... Oh, my God, I can't keep read that, but good. Big goth weekends, yeah, absolutely. The steampunk weekend this weekend. So the Dodo, of course, famous for the Caucus race, the Mad race, in Alice in Wonderland. So... Let's be honest. So, so Bram Stoker was the business manager of a very, very famous author called called Sir Henry Irving. And Sir Henry Irving was basically very much in demand, had his own kind of theatre company, and so he did extensive tours, and they're just on a really demanding tour of Scotland. And at that time, Sam probably would say some of it's underdeveloped still, but it was very underdeveloped. And so it was very arduous moving this kind of show around Scotland. And so by the time it was finished, they were pretty much exhausted. And Henry Irving had been here himself and really enjoyed Whitby. So he said to his manager Stoker, just go and stay in Whitby to recharge your batteries. And so Stoker arrives here and then sends for his family. But actually, his family can't make it for a few weeks. So he spends a few weeks in isolation here while he kind of recovers from the arduous of being on this tour around Scotland with Henry Irving. And he's already written two verticals. Yeah, we could do that, couldn't we? Let's close. So close your eyes if you worry about the vertical. There we go. So this is Cliff Street, by the way. Well, Diana, that steampunk weekend is the Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday this week. So it's imminent. So tomorrow, I think. Fantastic. Yeah, lovely, aren't they? Beautiful arches. The whole thing is just so pretty. But again, it's sort of not uniform, is it? So you've got this kind of different, like a blue house over here. So Stoker comes and he spends a few weeks here before his family can arrive. And he's already written two novels with characters and settings drawn from his native island, because he's Irish, Bram Stoker. So he wants to do something different. And he's working on this story set in Styria in Austria with a central character called Count Vampire. So Stoker's got this time here, and because he's by himself, what he does, expensive to live there or visit, Not a especially expensive place to visit. It's okay, you can afford it. Property, pretty expensive. Stayed at that house with the white side, says Emma. This one here. Oh, fantastic. Happy days. What a lovely place to stay. So, I don't know if you knew that you're close to... So, on a daily basis, basically because the housekeeper liked to get in and clean his room, he would walk down from the crescent right at the top, down this route, down to the library, did an awful lot of research into local legends and stories, and started to find out, of course, about all this kind of, the darkness, and this is kind of association with death and supernatural here. So he got more and more sort of compelled to weave Whitby into the story. And so when his wife and daughter join, he stays on for a further few weeks to really kind of get a sense of the town, because he decided that he wants to make the town a character in the novel of Dracula. He wants to give it a central importance. So this is the route down. We're going up it, but every day Bram Stoker, so we've walked back on the way home, would walk this route to the town library where he studied. And very famously, at the top of here, there is a bench. I mean, York on Halloween, but I get where you're coming from. So it's not just Bram Stoker that's been, if you like, associated with this place. Lots of romantics, writers, artists, they visit. But up here on East Terrace is a very, very famous piece of, so you see, right, we're coming up to the top of West Cliff now, but there's something that I need to show you, which is the famous view. Well, you're going to see now Whitby as Bram Stoker saw it, because his guest house was just around the corner from there. The building's looking out on the left-hand side. And so he would come down here on a daily basis, and he would sit, thank you very much, on a bench up here. And the view across the harbour here is, another famous view, absolutely, is the view that not only inspires him, but he describes it extensively within the novel. So, it's Gothic. I think it's a good saying, isn't it? But the Gothic style was about eerie castles, convents and caves. And Whitby just had that. We've got this windswept headland. We've got the dramatic Abbey, the ruins, the church. He added in the idea of swooping bats. And of course the darkness, the jet, using mourning. So everything is about blackness. So Bram Stoker would sit here looking out to sea, and he imagined a storm. The black ocean rose and fell on it on a Russian scooter, the Demeter, as it fought to reach Whitby harbour. And by some miracle, the vessel made it past the outer harbour works, only to be caught on the final wave and smashed against Tate Hill Pier. So it was smashed just down here, the Demeter. And as it keeled over, a giant black dog bounced from its deck, and it raced up the 199 steps to St Mary's Churchyard and vanished. And when townsfolk boarded the ship, they found its master dead, with no trace of the crew. There were 50 cases of earth in the hold, and so Dracula came to Whitby. So Stoker's novel, which was published in 1897, set a series of chapters here in Whitby. And the qualities he chose it for still remain. Obviously, it's not an undeniably pretty place, but it's moody. Close up with the Abbey, please. Well, we can't do much of a close-up from here, but we'll do what we can. It's quite a distance. The raw North Sea wind, as Lynn will tell you, can move the town from sunlight into dark shadow in a heartbeat. And Stoke was keenly aware of this effect. We can easily recognise Whitby at once from the description Stoke had Mina Murray set down. He writes, the little river, the Esk, runs deep through the valley, which broadens out as it comes out near the harbour, and the houses of the old town are red-roofed and seem piled up over one another. And right above the town is the ruin of Whitby Abbey, a most noble ruin of immense size and full of beautiful and romantic bits. There's a legend of the White Lady that's seen in one of the windows. So Bram Stoker used St Mary's graveyard for a few scenes in his book as well. Mina and Lucy, two girls, are taking a holiday in Whitby, take a tour with their landlord, Mr Swales, who tells them about the folklore. Very, very, very. and the legends surrounding some of the gravestones. The two girls were actually inspired by another two sisters who were staying with Bram Stoker in Royal Crescent. And Mr. Swales was taken from one of the names on the graveyards, the tombstone. You still can look for it there. Other characters in the book, Braithwaite, Lowry, Andrew Woodhouse and John Paxton, were also named after graves that you find in St Mary's. So Dracula is a novel that is truly shaped by Whitby. But let me just bring you over here as we give you a little panning shot. Thank you, Catherine. I'm glad it's enjoying. It's a special place to come because right now, right in front of us, thank you, Debbie. Those that can donate to the cost of my petrol getting over here, it's much, much appreciated. I thank you for that. It's a good best part 2 hours each way to drive. So anything you can put towards the cost of that makes this possible to do. Again, thank you, Heather. But let me just show you then the plaque that we have here. This is Bram Stoker's bench. The view from this spot inspired Bram Stoker, 1847 to 1912, to use Whitby as the setting of part of his world-famous novel Dracula. This seat was erected by Stroud Borough Council to mark the 60th anniversary of his death in 1980. So as we turn round and sit here, this is the view. This is the inspiration. This is the place where this Irishman, this author, sat and imagined and brought to life a character that is hard for us to imagine now, isn't it? A world of literature or horror where Dracula doesn't exist. It's become such a fabric, isn't it, of our culture, of our imagination, that inventing Dracula just sort of seems unbelievable. Keep munching chips, is what it says. I don't know why. So I think you have to say hats off to Bram Stoker. And of course, he didn't write lots of other books because he was a theatrical agent. But what a contribution that he made. What a stamp, if you like, do you know what I mean, on world culture to create this. And so this is why people flock here. They come back here year after year to celebrate. They just recently had, those I'm sure you might pick up on the story, there was a thing where a bunch of people dressed up and got the world record for people dressed as vampires up on the top. It inspires people to this wonderful kind of lunacy because it is just a wonderful place. It's atmospheric. It's like no other. It has a charm and otherworldliness that I can't begin to convey to you in words, but I'm sure the pictures begin to show you the stories, if you like, of this rugged little town that clings to the headland. Higgledy-piggledy. But you know how people would have survived here in years gone by. Tough winters. Very, very exposed. But yes, let's go and see the whalebone. Because one of the wonderful legacies of Cook, despite the fact that I know he gets a bad reputation, and I think everything that is said about him is fair game, but he's not all bad, and we should always be careful about too much moralising about figures from the past. That's not to say that we shouldn't acknowledge some of the things that now will no longer be seen as acceptable, but actually Captain Cook has a lot of positives associated with him, so please don't just see him in black and white as a colonist, as you might say, because actually he brought an awful lot. And he wasn't. The other thing that I find easy to feel about Captain Cook, by contrast, is Captain Cook was born into poverty, and everything he got was based on his talents. He wasn't the son of somebody. He wasn't gifted it. He wasn't bought a commission. He worked carrying coal as an apprentice, and he learnt his craft. He learnt his astronomy. He learnt his navigation skills. He learnt his seamanship on the job on an evening over a candle in an attic room shared with a bunch of other men. It's absolutely right, Mark. We shouldn't whitewash history. We should hold him to account and say it's absolutely ridiculous. He can claim islands. He can claim ownership of places. And hopefully that colonialism now, although with Putin you do wonder if that idea has really kind of moved on. But nonetheless, Cook isn't all bad. But more steps. It's the Whitby way, don't you know? But we have to go up here because we want to go and show you one of those fabulous sights in Whitby, which of course is the whalebone. And this is actually the third set of whalebone jawbones that have been up here, because they do wear out. They last about 100 years. But just off this coast, there are still whales, but not as many as there used to be, because there was a whaling industry here that was super productive, but ended up completely endangering the whale population. And what's interesting, actually, is that one of the big byproducts of whaling was the oil and the blubber. What could they do with it? And what they decided to do with it was use it to light the town. And so it's said that Whitby absolutely stank through the whaling years because of this awful smell of burning whale oil to light the lamps. Now, thankfully, that has gone out of practice. But whaling was big business here. And as Cook is sort of taking off his career, this is the heart of the whaling period. Between 1753 and 1833, there's 55 whaling ships working out of Whitby, 55. And in 1814, 172 whales were caught and processed in Whitby. And that produced 1,400 tonnes of oil. And that was what was used, as I say, to light the town. So the smell was not great, but it was, I suppose, pretty sustainable, the way they were doing it. Wouldn't be nice, would it? What we have here is the third set of whale jawbones. And these have been gifted by the Inuit people, which is kind of appropriate because Whitby's to Anchorage in Alaska, and there is a strong relationship between Whitby and the Inuit people. It was donated by native Alaskans because people believe, I think not unreasonably, that Cook did an awful lot to create cordial relationships with native peoples on the south of the islands. Now, actually, in the end, he got murdered because he did something very stupid, and he tried to take a king hostage, and he paid with his life for it. But generally speaking, wherever he went, Cook made friends. What's fantastic about this, of course, is that you wait for the people to go by. If we get in the right place, we can get the whale bones to frame. Let's move back a little bit. There we go, so folk go in there. That, again, one of the most famous views in Yorkshire. The whale bones framing the Abbey up at the top of the headland. So Cook did a great deal, I think, to foster relationships with people that would have been seen as not important. Should we put it that way? Let's be honest. To the British colonials, the people of the South Sea Islands didn't matter. It was their possessions. So it's kind of easy to dismiss him as a colonialist, but I think it's a disservice. He does so much to advance our knowledge of the world, its seas, continents, navigation. And put simply, Cook was the first man to see all the world, which is quite remarkable, isn't it? You think about this guy who's born and grows up 20 miles away from here in the middle of the 18th century, becomes the first man to really see the world. At the end of his 3 lengthy voyages, he comes to his death in Tahiti, as I say. An argument spills over into threats to kidnap the chieftain, the local king, and it results in his death. It's his stubborn Yorkshire intensity, it would seem, that had taken him 3 times around the world was his undoing in the end. But this statue here is commissioned by the governments of Australia and New Zealand, which shows that he remains a hugely significant figure. So let me show you the boards on here, because this is obviously something that the people of Australia, I'll show you the New Zealand one in a minute, are still very, very happy to celebrate these links. But of course, there is the other story. There is the story about, of course, the Aboriginals, the native peoples, the Maoris, of course. So this plaque was presented by the people of Canada. So again, I'll show you for those that are Canadians on here. It's commemorating the 250th anniversary of his birth. So unveiled by the High Commissioner of Canada in 1978. He does, Joy. Well, funny enough, last time I was here, Joy, we did back-to-back. I did Captain Cook in Whitby, Alex did Captain Cook in Melbourne. So that's when I was here last time. So this one, any of our friends on here from New Zealand, this is the plaque from your people. So I think there's a deep, long-term respect. I think Whitby has a lot of friends around the world, it's fair to say. And Captain Cook, of course, has become synonymous with that. Funnily enough, where Alex was, in Melbourne, was the home. How was it that the home of Captain Cook was in Melbourne? Well, because somebody entrepreneurial decided to take down the cottage where they were born, where he lived, took it across the other side of the world and rebuilt it. So Cook's Cottage is in Melbourne. It's a tribute to simple people who raised a boy to believe that the world was there to experience. And so in so many ways, isn't he? He's like the patron saint of Hago. He really inspired us to believe that the world is there to learn about, to experience from, to measure, to understand, to make connections. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you've enjoyed this tour of Whitby. You've enjoyed your time here. I'm going to take you around the corner in a minute and show you the guest house where Bram Stoker stayed, a little coda to the tour. But I'm just going to walk us down to the seafront down here so we can... I think so, yeah. It does seem appropriate to me because Cook at the end of the day was about discovery. He's about knowledge. He's about making connections, about creating possibilities. He was, a man that was ahead of his time. And yes, as I say, he's completely has got the bloodstains of colonialism on his hands. But uniquely, he's not particularly to blame for it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been lovely to get this. If you're not following me already, there's a button at the top right which says follow. So do give me a follow. Thank you, Outstanding Tour. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everybody who's contributed. It's really helpful. As I say, it's going to cover my cost with petrol, which is great. And buy me a pint when I finish and some fish and chips before I go home. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I don't know the number, but I know a lot of you have dug in, and that's the way to do it, isn't it? If everybody puts in a little bit, those that can, many hands make light work. So thank you for that. Thank you for those that have enjoyed it, brighten their day. That's lovely to hear. It's such a special, special place, is this. And I think that if you haven't been before, you can now see why Whitby is a highlight of the Hago calendar. This is the third time that I've been here, and I see no reason not to keep coming over and over again. It is a bit of a trek, but by leaving it a good few months, I think absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's not the sort of place you want to bring you every week and you start getting sick of it and get bored of it. I want it to feel like it's our outing, that we all get on our virtual coach and we come and have our evening out, we have our night out in Whitby. It's a special sort of place. I want to keep it special for you. So let's just take you now to show you as the final destination on our tour, the place where Bram Stoker stayed, because I mentioned, of course, that he set up at the Royal Crescent. Well, that's right in front of us here. And this was a well-to-do area, because obviously, as I say, he was wealthy. He was the business manager of Sir Henry Irving. He was a very successful actor. So consequently, I see what's down here. If it's still here, the bombed-out house, I'm not sure if it is. If it is, I'll show you that as well, because that's really cool. I don't know if it's still here or not. I don't know if that's a temporary thing. There was like a World War I, like air raid house, which was here last time. I don't know if it's still here. I'll go have a look, because it's very near here. And this is the thing. What's nice, actually, it comes to places, stuff changes. And so as a guy, you kind of stay on your toes a little bit, because you're not always entirely sure, what's what, and if stuff's still there. So that's a better view, isn't it, this time? Thank you. Less busy season to visit, said Dolores. Well, off season, really. I wouldn't really come in July and August. I mean, I'm here in the evening, so it's quieter. Schools break up next week, so it'll get a lot busier. Weekends, bank holidays, very, very busy indeed. So if you're able to come in the autumn, it's obviously a bit cooler, but you'll have the place a lot to yourself. October, a good time to come. A lot of winter will be closed down, a lot of the attractions. So springtime. But, basically, if the weather's okay, you can have people here, particularly people of sort of Teesside, North Yorkshire, will come down and visit. They're sort of, it's their place, their kind of Teesside resort. Thanks to this film, we're just pretty much finished anyway. I'm just showing you a couple of last little bits on the tour. And my car's very near. Oh, look at that. We've got, Mark, another wire sculpture. So we'll bring up... Yeah, so Lynn, we're right up on the west cliff now. So we'll go down and have a look towards the sea in just a minute. But we have another... So this time, our wire sculpture. Number 7 cottage, recommend it. Oh, fantastic. So this time with lobster pots. What's interesting here, if you've noticed, is a tin hat, which suggests to me that this person was a warden, probably an ARP warden. Oh, it's a lady. It's Dora. Here we are. Here's Dora's story. So Dora Walker was the first female fishing boat skipper on the northeast coast. So I'll take a photo of that. You can read that at your leisure. I thought she looked rather female. So take a photo of that, and you can read that at your leisure. But this is what I want to show you down here, which is, I think it was part of a flower exhibition, but they've obviously left it in. And it's a replica relic of a house that's been bombed in an air raid. So you see, pretty modest size house. You can see here the old Belfast sink there in the back. So a modest sized kitchen. We've got the lounge there, the fire, and of course an enormous shell which has landed right in the middle of it. So again, let me take a photograph of that so you can have a look at it and blow it up. It's fairly new, Bridget. I think it's maybe here a year or two. I noticed it last time I was here, part of Whitby in bloom. But there was an awful lot of air raid damage done at this side. That's why I was surprised about the church. I thought it was on this side. Yeah, I think it's planted. I don't think it's organic growth, Doris. I think it is, a bloom insulation, as you might say. But, yeah, Belfast sinks, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Belfast sinks. Which is one of these over here. And you get terrible backache usually because you lean right in. Thank you, Connie. So let me just show you then the final bit. So more of those flowers. They're beautiful, aren't they? So not a great way of representing, obviously, very, very traumatic and horrible for the people involved. What do you call it? Belfast sink, as in the city in Northern Ireland, Belfast. And the cat, yes. Black postbox. Yeah, they're using that for donations. So they're asking people to put in a few quid there towards the cost of running Whitby in Bloom, which is obviously the annual competition for, Belfast sink. That's right, Belfast. I'm assuming that's where they originated in Belfast. I don't know, but it's hard to imagine otherwise why it would be called. So, last 1 minute of the tour. Bring it across to 6 Royal Crescent, so we can find the original lodgings of Mr. Bram Stoker, who came here in 1890. A dry sink. So it's sort of frightfully grand at this stage. Obviously, what you've got is, because we're up at the kind of the top here, and you get the vistas across the sea. This is where the wealthy have had holidays, and so this is obviously very much built to gear up for more affluent holidaymakers in this part. So it's rather elegant, don't you think? So number 6 is just around here. Very nice curve, so a little bit like Bath, isn't it, with its curving crescent, bit of Regency elegance. No, disc zone, it's parking in your car. You put like a time disc on, shows what time you arrive. You've got 3 hours free parking, so that's what that means. And so if there's no disc zone, it means discs aren't operating here. Thank you, Christine. I assumed that must have been the case, but I wasn't entirely sure. But thank you for clarifying. That's always useful. So here we are. So Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, stayed here annually for 6 years between 1890 and 1896. And of course, Dracula itself published in 1897. So there we go, guys. That is my tour of Whitby, our tour of Whitby. And as ever, I've thoroughly enjoyed being out here. If there's any questions, I'll happily take them now. Otherwise, I'm going to shut this down because we've been on for quite a while. And I want to get back and on the road before, certainly the other side of the moors, before the light starts to go down, because it does get very, very dark up here. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, definitely read Dracula if you haven't already. Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's lovely comments, lovely feedback. I do appreciate it. And I'm just walking back to the car, ready for some fish and chips, absolutely. Yeah, they do look nice in gardens at Belfast Sinks, actually. They're good planters. Because they've obviously got the plug hole, so drainage isn't an issue that it is in some other places. Thank you, everybody. So if you haven't already, do give me a follow. The button at the top right corner, I believe, of your screen enables you to do that. And then you can see whereabouts I'm out and about next. And Robin Hood's Bay is next week. Did we say next Thursday? Really looking forward to that one. Thank you, Susan. That's going to be fantastic to get down there for. I have been before, but it was a surprise to us. It wouldn't have been listed. You wouldn't have seen the chance of it. But those that are that come with me on the off chance tours, as you might say, will have already been to Robin Hood's Bay. But the signal is now better than it was because I've got a better SIM card. So we've addressed some of those connectivity issues. So I'm just going to come down here just for the last little view for you of the waterfront. I'm not going to climb down because I'm going to climb all the way back up again. But you can see now, hopefully. Thank you, Nata. The painted huts are starting to come into view. We've got like Bonnie's tours down there. Thank you, MB. That's very nice of you to say so. I'll just give you a little kind of close-up. The huts down there, by the magic of Zoom, you can hopefully now see the rows of... Oh, really? Gabby was in Roger's Bay last week. I'm fantastic. I will, yeah. I'm very much focused on getting back safely. So, but what we'll do is we'll just take that Zoom off because it's just horrible to walk with, and then I'm just going to finish off and give you a nice view. Hopefully, you can hear the sea. I'm going to shut up talking. We have a minute looking out to the sea to finish off the tour. Oh, there's an engine running here. I'm just going to go a bit further because there's an engine just running, and that's not creating the mood vibe that I'm looking for. So, in the meantime, I'm parked about 3 minutes walk away from here. So that's an old rookie error that you'll learn pretty soon as a guide is make sure your car's parked near where your tour ends rather than begins. Otherwise, you've got a long walk back. So this looks like a better place for us. So let's just go down a little bit here. And let's take in Whitby Harbour. Thank you, Carol. Guys, it's been an absolute blast. I'm going to leave you now with a minute. Just watch the sea going out, coming in again. In the beautiful North Yorkshire fishing town of Whitby. It's been an absolute delight to have you all with us. Let's finish with the sea. Thank you. Thanks, guys. See you soon.